Alex sat in his dimly lit studio, a beam of afternoon sunlight slanting through the blinds, creating patterns on the sketch he was working on. But his mind wasn't on the intricate typography he was crafting. It had been weeks since he first noticed the subtle shift in Nika, his wife of 5 years. She'd become distant, her laughter less frequent, her smile tinged with something he couldn't quite name. It all began with her phone. Once upon a time, Nika's phone would be left lying around carelessly. But now, it was always within her grasp, screen tilted away from his view. The quiet ding of notifications brought the smallest, slyest of smiles to her face, smiles she didn't share with him. When Alex asked, her responses were curt. "Work stuff," she'd say, eyes darting away as though searching for an exit. Alex wanted to believe her. She was a marketer, after all, always fielding messages from colleagues and clients. But there was something else. It wasn't the content of her excuses but the way she delivered them, a discomfort, an underlying tremor in her voice. One night, as they sat on opposite ends of the couch, Nika's phone vibrated. She glanced at it, the glow of the screen illuminating her face, and Alex caught that strange smile again. Before he could stop himself, he asked, "Who's that?" Her eyes flicked up, startled, then quickly hardened. "Just Lana," she replied, referring to her best friend. "Can I see?" he asked lightly, forcing a laugh to mask his unease. "No," she said sharply, then softened it with, "She's venting about her breakup. It's private." That was the first wall she built between them, and Alex felt its weight pressing down on his chest. The days that followed only deepened Alex's suspicions. Nika began to stay late at work more often, citing marketing campaigns and urgent deadlines. On one such evening, Alex decided to surprise her by picking her up from the office. He bought her favorite coffee on the way and waited in his car outside the sleek glass building. An hour passed. Then two. Finally, Nika emerged, not alone. She was with a man Alex didn't recognize, laughing at something he'd said. Her head tilted back in a way Alex hadn't seen in months. The man touched her elbow as they walked, an intimate, fleeting gesture that sent a surge of heat to Alex's cheeks. When Nika spotted Alex, her smile froze. She quickly stepped away from the man and hurried over, her face flushed. "Alex, what are you doing here?" "Thought I'd surprise you," he said, holding out the coffee. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled. "Thanks," she murmured, avoiding his eyes. "This is Daniel, from work. He's new." Daniel gave a polite nod, but Alex couldn't shake the smug undertone in his expression. "Nice to meet you." Alex gritted his teeth, muttered a strained, "You too," and watched as Daniel sauntered off, hands in his pockets. At home, Alex couldn't keep quiet any longer. "Why didn't you tell me about him?" he asked as they prepared for bed. "About who?" Nika asked innocently, slipping under the covers. "Daniel." Her laugh was forced. "What's there to tell? He's just a coworker." But Alex saw the way her eyes darted to her phone again, as if it held some secret. He felt like he was living with a stranger. The following weekend, as Nika showered, Alex sat on the edge of their bed, staring at her phone charging on the nightstand. It was locked, of course, but he noticed something peculiar, a notification from an app he didn't recognize. A simple heart emoji, sent by someone named D. His stomach churned. Who was D? Unable to resist, Alex began digging. He stayed up late while Nika slept, scrolling through social media accounts, searching for a clue. On her Instagram, he found a comment thread under a recent post. She had shared a picture of a coffee cup and a marketing book with the caption, "Busy days, but loving the grind." Daniel_B_09 had commented, "Looking forward to Monday's meeting, winky face." Her reply, "Me too." The emoji burned into Alex's mind, mocking him. Desperation pushed Alex to confront her the next morning. "Do you have something to tell me?" he asked over breakfast, his voice barely above a whisper. Nika paused mid-sip of her coffee, her eyes narrowing. "What's that supposed to mean? Is there something going on between you and Daniel?" The cup clinked loudly as she set it down. "Alex, that's ridiculous. You're being paranoid." But her defensiveness only fueled his doubts. "I saw his comment on your post." "So? He's a colleague." Are you really jealous over an Instagram comment? Maybe I wouldn't be if you weren't so secretive lately, Alex shot back, his voice rising. Nika's chair scraped against the floor as she stood abruptly. I don't have time for this, she said, grabbing her bag. I'm late for work. As she walked out the door, Alex felt a mixture of anger, fear, and humiliation. Was he losing his wife to a man he didn't even know? Over the next few days, Alex's suspicions consumed him. He found himself spiraling, replaying every interaction with Nika, searching for hidden meanings in her words and actions. He considered hiring a private investigator, even downloaded a spyware app in a moment of weakness but deleted it, ashamed. The tension between them grew unbearable. Nika seemed more distant than ever, and Alex felt like an outsider in his own marriage. Late one night, as Alex lay awake staring at the ceiling, he made a decision. If she wouldn't tell him the truth, he'd find it himself. The air was electric at the annual corporate party, a stark contrast to the suffocating silence Alex had grown used to at home. He arrived late, reluctant but hopeful that seeing Nika in a social setting might rekindle the warmth between them. The venue was extravagant, glittering chandeliers bathed the room in golden light, and clusters of people mingled around elegantly set tables or on the polished dance floor. Alex scanned the room until he spotted her, Nika, his wife, radiant in a deep emerald dress that clung to her figure perfectly. For a fleeting moment, pride flickered in his chest. She was stunning, the center of attention among a group of colleagues, her laughter carrying over the clinking of glasses. But his heart sank as he noticed something, or rather, someone, standing just a little too close to her. Liam. Alex recognized him immediately from photos Nika had shown him early in their relationship. He was the ex, the amicable breakup, as she'd put it, someone who'd always seemed a little too perfect. And now, here he was, leaning in as if no time had passed, his tailored suit fitting like a second skin, his confident smile shining like he owned the room. Alex approached cautiously, pretending to head for the bar, but keeping his ears open. As he passed their group, Liam's voice cut through the crowd. It's been far too long, Nika. You haven't changed a bit. Nika's laughter was soft and genuine, the kind Alex hadn't heard in months. Oh, stop. You're just saying that, she said, lightly touching his arm. Alex froze mid-step, bow rising in his throat. The way her fingers lingered on Liam's sleeve, it was so casual, so intimate. His hand tightened around his glass as he moved to a shadowed corner, his eyes fixed on them. The night dragged on, and so did Nika's interactions with Liam. Alex watched as they talked, their heads bent close together, their smiles growing wider with every shared word. She laughed more with Liam in those few hours than she had with Alex in months. Maybe I'm overthinking it, Alex muttered to himself, but the thought rang hollow. He tried to distract himself by engaging with her coworkers, joining a conversation here or there, but his gaze kept drifting back to her. It didn't help that Liam had a magnetic presence. Every gesture, every joke seemed to pull Nika closer. And then came the dance. The music shifted to something softer, and the crowd thinned as couples moved to the floor. Alex stood stiffly near the bar, sipping his drink, when Liam extended a hand to Nika. Oh, I don't think, Nika began, glancing briefly toward Alex. Their eyes met, and Alex's heart quickened. Come on, just one dance. For old time's sake, Liam said, his smile disarming. Nika hesitated for a beat too long. Then, with a small, apologetic shrug, she placed her hand in his. Alex felt the room tilt as the two moved to the dance floor. They glided seamlessly to the music, Liam's hand resting confidently on Nika's waist, her hand on his shoulder. Alex's nails bit into his palm as he forced himself to watch, humiliation burning through him. Was this what he had become? A spectator in his own marriage? Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Finally, the song ended, and Alex let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. But before he could approach Nika, Liam pulled her aside to a quieter corner of the room. Alex followed, keeping a safe distance, his heart pounding in his ears. He couldn't hear their conversation over the hum of the party, but their body language was unmistakable. Liam leaned closer, saying something that made Nika blush and glance away. Then, with a sly grin, he reached out to tuck a stray strand of hair behind her ear. It was the intimacy of the gesture that shattered Alex's restraint. He moved closer, positioning himself just out of sight behind a column. That's when it happened. Nika laughed softly, her face tilted up toward Liam's. He leaned in, and before Alex could register what was happening, their lips met. The world seemed to stop. Alex's vision blurred, his chest tightening as though the air had been sucked from the room. He gripped the edge of the column, his legs threatening to give out. They kissed as if no one was watching, as if they were the only two people in the room. And maybe they were, because no one else noticed, no one else cared. Alex felt like a ghost, invisible and irrelevant, watching his wife share a moment she hadn't given him in years. When they finally broke apart, Nika glanced around nervously, as if realizing the risk. Liam said something, his hand still resting on her arm, and she nodded before stepping back. Alex didn't confront them, not yet. His humiliation was too raw, his emotions too volatile. He needed answers, but not here, not with an audience. Back at home, Alex waited in the darkened living room, the clock ticking loudly in the silence. When Nika finally arrived, she looked startled to see him. "Alex, you're still up?" she asked, her tone overly casual. "Yeah," he replied, his voice hollow. "Thought we could talk." Nika hesitated, then set her purse down and crossed her arms. "What about?" "I saw you tonight," Alex said, standing. His words hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. Her brow furrowed. "Saw me what?" "With Liam," Alex said bluntly. "I saw you two kissing." Nika's face drained of color. "Alex, it's not what you think." "Don't," he interrupted, his voice cracking. "Don't lie to me, Nika. I stood there watching the whole thing. You didn't even notice." She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Her silence was confirmation enough. "Why?" Alex demanded, his voice rising. "Why would you do this? Am I not enough for you? Is this why you've been so distant? Hiding your phone, lying about work?" Nika flinched, tears pooling in her eyes. "It was a mistake," she whispered. "I didn't mean for it to happen." "A mistake?" Alex laughed bitterly. "You looked pretty deliberate to me. How long has this been going on?" "It hasn't. It was just tonight," she insisted, stepping closer. "Please, Alex, you have to believe me. Liam, he caught me off guard." "Off guard?" Alex's voice cracked. "You let him kiss you. You let him touch you. God, Nika, do you even hear yourself?" She reached for his hand, but he pulled away as if her touch burned. "I'm sorry," she said desperately. "I love you, Alex." "It didn't mean anything." "Didn't mean anything?" Alex's voice broke entirely. "You humiliated me, Nika. You betrayed me in front of everyone." Nika sobbed, but Alex turned away, unable to look at her. The weight of her betrayal crushed him. The image of her and Liam seared into his mind. He didn't know what hurt more, the kiss itself or the realization that she'd so easily disregarded him. In that moment, Alex wasn't sure if their marriage could survive. But one thing was clear, the trust they'd built was shattered, and it would take far more than apologies to piece it back together. The morning light filtered through the curtains, but it did little to brighten the oppressive mood in the apartment. Alex sat at the kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a cup of untouched coffee. The bitterness of last night hung in the air, thicker than the silence between him and Nika, who stood across from him. She looked disheveled, her makeup faintly smeared from tears she'd shed after their confrontation. "Alex," she began, her voice trembling. "We need to talk." "We talked last night," Alex replied flatly, not looking up. "What's left to say?" "Please," she said, stepping closer, her tone almost a whisper. "Just hear me out." Reluctantly, Alex leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. His heart pounded in his chest, dread pooling in his stomach. He already felt like he'd lost everything. What could she possibly say to make it worse? "I lied to you," Nika admitted, her eyes welling with fresh tears. "It wasn't just last night." Alex's jaw tightened, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the edge of the table. "How long?" His voice was quiet but laced with a dangerous edge. 3 months, she whispered, barely audible. "It's been 3 months." The room tilted, and Alex felt like he'd been sucker punched. 3 months. For 3 months, while he had been agonizing over their crumbling relationship, Nika had been carrying on with Liam. While he had blamed himself, questioning what he could do to fix things, she had been giving herself to someone else. 3 months, he repeated, his voice hollow. 3 months, and you're only confessing now because I caught you. Would you have ever told me if I hadn't seen you two last night? Nika's head dropped, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I don't know, she admitted. I was scared. I didn't want to lose you. Alex let out a bitter laugh, the sound foreign to his own ears. Didn't want to lose me? You didn't seem too worried about that when you were sneaking around with him. Nika dropped into the chair across from him, her face crumpling. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said, her voice cracking. It started innocently. We reconnected at a networking event. We were just catching up and, I don't know, Alex. I was feeling lost and Liam, he made me feel seen. Alex's eyes snapped to hers, a mixture of anger and disbelief in his expression. Seen? So what? I was just some shadow in your life? Do you have any idea how hard I tried to reach you, Nika? How many nights I stayed awake, wondering what I was doing wrong? I know, she sobbed. I know I hurt you and I hate myself for it. I didn't realize how far I drifted until it was too late. Liam, he was just there and she broke off, unable to continue. And you chose him, Alex said coldly. Over me. Over us. Nika reached out, her hand trembling as she touched his arm. It wasn't about choosing him. It was never about love, Alex. It was a mistake. A terrible, selfish mistake. 3 months isn't a mistake, Nika. That's a decision. Over and over again, every time you texted him, every time you lied to me, every time you were with him, you made a choice. Her tears flowed freely now, and she clutched at his arm desperately. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging you, Alex. Please, give me a chance to make this right. How? He demanded, pulling his arm away. How do you even begin to fix something like this? You betrayed me, Nika. You humiliated me. You made me feel like a fool. I'll do anything, she pleaded, her voice cracking. Therapy, quitting my job, whatever it takes. Just please don't leave me. Alex stood abruptly, pacing the small kitchen. He felt like a caged animal, suffocated by her words and the weight of her betrayal. Quitting your job? He scoffed. How convenient. Was that going to be your grand gesture to prove your loyalty? Or is it just because you're afraid of running into him again? It's not like that, Nika said, her voice small. I just want to remove any temptation, any chance of hurting you again. Too late, Alex muttered, running a hand through his hair. You already destroyed us. The humiliation bubbled beneath the surface, memories of last night flashing in his mind. The way Liam's hand had rested on her back, the way they'd kissed as if no one else mattered. The way Nika had looked at him, like she was his. Alex thought of every moment he had doubted himself, every sleepless night spent wondering if he was enough. And all the while, she'd been betraying him. You don't get it, do you? Alex said, his voice rising. This isn't just about an affair. This is about respect. About trust. You threw that away for what? For someone you used to date? Someone you said didn't matter? I wasn't thinking, Nika said, her voice frantic. I was lonely, Alex. I felt like we were strangers, and I didn't know how to fix it. So, instead of talking to me, you turned to him, Alex said, his voice dripping with contempt. You turned to the one person who you knew would hurt me the most. Nika's head snapped up, guilt and panic etched on her face. I wasn't trying to hurt you. But you did, Alex said. You humiliated me. You betrayed our marriage. You made me feel like I was nothing. Her sobs filled the room, but Alex couldn't bring himself to comfort her. He had spent so long trying to save their marriage, trying to understand her distance, only to find out that she had already given up on him. What am I supposed to do with this, Nika? He asked, his voice breaking. How am I supposed to look at you and not see him? How am I supposed to believe anything you say ever again? I'll prove it to you, she said desperately. I'll do whatever it takes to earn back your trust. Please, Alex. Don't give up on us. But Alex wasn't sure there was an us left to save. The weight of her betrayal crushed him, and he felt like a stranger in his own life. The woman he had loved, the woman he had trusted, had torn his world apart. Could he forgive her? Could he ever move past the image of her and Liam together? Alex didn't know. And that terrified him more than anything. The next few days were a haze of tension and unease. Alex moved through his routines in silence, barely acknowledging Nika's attempts at reconciliation. Her tearful apologies felt hollow, her promises to do whatever it takes ringing in his ears like a cruel joke. The weight of her betrayal pressed down on him, suffocating, unrelenting. But Alex couldn't let it go. Something about her confession didn't sit right. 3 months. The phrase gnawed at his mind. She claimed it was a mistake, that it was spontaneous and meaningless, but how could something that lasted for months be anything but deliberate? One evening, as Nika sat quietly in the living room scrolling through her phone, Alex retreated to their bedroom. He opened his laptop, his hands trembling as he typed in the login for their shared phone account. It had been years since they set it up together, back when they trusted each other with everything. The account opened, and Alex clicked through the billing records, his stomach nodding with every second that passed. The numbers didn't lie. Among the usual calls and texts were repeated entries for a single number, hundreds of texts, late-night calls, hours-long conversations. The frequency intensified over the past 3 months, with several texts exchanged in the middle of the night. Alex copied the number into a reverse lookup site, holding his breath. The name that came up made his blood run cold. Liam Harrington. It was as though the floor dropped out from beneath him. Nika hadn't just been reckless. She had been careful enough to cover her tracks but not careful enough to erase everything. Every late-night call, every text she had sent, was proof of her deliberate choices. This wasn't a fleeting lapse in judgment. This was calculated, premeditated. The phone records weren't enough for Alex. He needed more. He needed the full truth, not just the watered-down version she'd given him through her tears. His eyes flicked toward Nika's office, where her work laptop sat unattended. She often left it there, never imagining he might access it. Alex walked quietly into the room and opened the device. He remembered her password, a simple combination of their anniversary and her favorite number. The laptop unlocked, and her email inbox appeared. At first, everything seemed normal. Work emails filled the screen, mundane updates from clients and colleagues. But as Alex scrolled, he noticed a folder marked Personal. It stood out immediately. Nika wasn't the type to organize her inbox, let alone create separate folders. He clicked on it, his heart racing. Inside were dozens of emails exchanged between Nika and Liam. At first glance, they seemed innocent, work-related subjects and polite language. But as Alex scrolled further back, the tone shifted. He read messages that made his stomach churn. I can't stop thinking about last night. You make me feel alive again. When I see him, I feel so guilty, but being with you feels so right. Alex's hands shook as he scrolled through the thread. The emails painted a picture of something far more intimate, far more damning, than Nika had confessed. They weren't just secret lovers. They were plotting. They arranged meetings under the guise of work events, carefully timed to avoid suspicion. Liam praised her, fed her ego, and encouraged her to lie. The worst blow came when Alex opened an attachment in one of the emails. It was a receipt from a boutique hotel downtown, dated just 2 weeks prior. The booking was for 2 guests. Alex stared at the screen, the room spinning around him. He could barely breathe. The humiliation of it all struck him like a physical blow. While he had been sitting at home, worrying about their relationship, blaming himself for her distance, she had been meeting Liam in secret. While he was losing sleep over their crumbling marriage, she was sharing a bed with someone else. Closing the laptop, Alex slumped into the chair, his head in his hands. The enormity of her betrayal washed over him, suffocating. It wasn't just the affair. It was the lies, the planning, the audacity. She hadn't stumbled into this. She had built it, step by step, choice by choice, with no regard for the man who trusted her. When Nika returned home that evening, Alex was waiting. He sat at the kitchen table, the phone records and printed emails spread out in front of him. His face was pale, his jaw set, his eyes hollow. Nika froze in the doorway, her gaze darting to the papers. "What's all this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Sit down," Alex said coldly. He didn't raise his voice, but the command in his tone left no room for argument. Nika hesitated, then slowly lowered herself into the chair across from him. "I found your phone records," Alex began, his voice steady but deadly. "I found your emails. And I found this." He held up the hotel receipt. Nika's face crumpled, tears immediately springing to her eyes. "Alex, please. Don't," he snapped, slamming the receipt onto the table. "Don't try to explain it away. Don't insult me with more lies." "It wasn't what it looked like," she stammered. "I was confused. I didn't mean to hurt you." "You didn't mean to hurt me?" Alex's voice rose, shaking with anger. "You planned this, Nika. You lied to me. Over and over again, you made a choice. Don't stand there and tell me it was an accident." Nika sobbed, burying her face in her hands. "I was lost, Alex. I didn't know what to do. I felt so disconnected from you, and Liam, he just—" "Don't you dare," Alex hissed, leaning forward. "Don't you dare blame me for this. I tried. God, I tried so hard to reach you, to fix whatever was broken. But you were too busy screwing someone else. I love you," Nika cried, her voice breaking. "I love you, Alex. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll do anything to fix this." Alex stood, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Fix this? How do you fix something like this, Nika? How do you erase the lies, the betrayal, the humiliation? Every time I look at you, I see him." "Please," she whispered, reaching for him. "Don't leave me. I'll do whatever it takes." Alex stepped back, her touch repelling him. He looked at her, broken and desperate, but he felt no pity. Only anger. Only grief. "You already lost me," he said quietly. "The moment you decided I wasn't enough." As he walked away, Nika's sobs echoed behind him, but Alex didn't stop. The truth had shattered their marriage, and he wasn't sure it could ever be pieced back together. The days following Alex's discovery of Nika's betrayal were agonizing. He avoided her as much as possible, spending his time at the studio or walking aimlessly through the city, trying to make sense of the storm that had upended his life. Nika, on the other hand, seemed to alternate between desperation and denial. She tried to cook his favorite meals, leave him notes apologizing, and beg him to talk. But Alex was resolute. There was nothing left to say. One evening, he returned home to find her sitting at the dining table, her face pale and tear-streaked. Spread out before her were photos of their wedding, moments frozen in time that now felt like cruel mockeries of the life they'd built together. "Alex," she said softly, her voice trembling. "Please. Can we talk? One last time?" He wanted to walk past her, to escape the suffocating tension in the room, but something in her tone stopped him. He sat down across from her, his expression cold. "What do you want, Nika?" he asked flatly. Her hands shook as she picked up one of the photos, a candid shot of them laughing during their first dance. "Do you remember this?" she whispered. "You stepped on my dress, and we couldn't stop laughing." Alex's jaw tightened. "What's your point?" Her tears came then, spilling over as she clutched the photo to her chest. "I ruined everything. I know I did. But I can't let us end like this. Please, Alex. I'll do anything. Therapy, moving away, quitting my job, whatever it takes to fix this." He stared at her, his heart a cold, heavy stone in his chest. "It's not that simple," he said. "You don't just fix something like this. You destroyed my trust, Nika. You humiliated me. And you expect me to just forget all of that?" "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. "I don't expect you to forget. I just want the chance to prove to you that I can be better, that we can be better." Alex laughed bitterly, the sound sharp and hollow. "Better? You planned this, Nika. You lied to my face for months. And you want me to believe this sudden epiphany is enough to wipe all of that away?" She reached for his hand, but he pulled back, her touch like fire on his skin. "I love you," she said, her voice breaking. "I've always loved you. I lost my way." "No," Alex said firmly. "You didn't lose your way. You made choices. Over and over again, you chose to betray me. Don't sit here and pretend you're some helpless victim. Her sobs filled the room, but Alex felt nothing but anger. He had spent weeks, months, trying to salvage their relationship, blaming himself for the distance between them. And all the while, she had been sneaking around with Liam, laughing at his pain. I can't do this anymore, he said finally, his voice cold and steady. I've already contacted a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce. Nika's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. No, she whispered, shaking her head. You don't mean that. I do, Alex said. There's nothing left between us, Nika. Nothing worth saving. She stood abruptly, knocking the chair over in her haste. Alex, please. Don't do this. Don't throw away everything we've built. I'm not the one who threw it away, he said sharply. That was all you. The next morning, Alex began the process of disentangling their lives. He called his lawyer and set up a meeting to finalize the divorce papers. The apartment, once filled with memories of love and laughter, now felt like a prison. Every corner reminded him of the life they'd shared, a life that was now irreparably broken. Nika followed him around as he packed a suitcase, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Where are you going? She asked, her voice small. To my brother's place, he said curtly. I can't stay here anymore. Please, she begged, clutching at his arm. We can work through this. I know we can. Alex shook her off, his patience wearing thin. You had your chance, Nika. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. As he zipped up the suitcase, her sobs grew louder, but he didn't look back. Walking out the door felt like breaking free of a weight that had been crushing him for months. In the days that followed, Alex worked tirelessly with his lawyer to finalize the divorce. He wanted it over as quickly as possible, desperate to sever the ties that bound him to Nika. But she didn't make it easy. She showed up at his brother's apartment unannounced, pleading with him to reconsider. She called and texted incessantly, leaving voicemails filled with apologies and declarations of love. You don't understand, Alex, one voicemail began, her voice trembling. I was lost, and Liam, he was just a distraction. You're the one I want. You're the one I've always wanted. Please don't do this. But Alex deleted the messages without responding. Her words meant nothing to him now. She had already shown him where her priorities lay, and he refused to be a second choice. The final blow came during a meeting with his lawyer. As they reviewed the divorce papers, Alex noticed a clause about the division of assets. The lawyer explained that Nika had requested spousal support, claiming she had sacrificed her career for their marriage. The audacity of it made Alex's blood boil. She wants what? He demanded, his voice rising. She's arguing that she gave up opportunities to support you, the lawyer said carefully. It's not an uncommon request. Alex laughed bitterly. Support me? Is that what she calls lying and cheating? The humiliation was almost too much to bear. Nika had destroyed their marriage, and now she wanted to profit from it. But Alex refused to let her take anything more from him. He instructed his lawyer to fight the request, determined to ensure she faced the consequences of her actions. The day the divorce was finalized, Alex felt an unexpected sense of relief. The weight that had been pressing on him for months lifted, leaving behind a hollow but liberating emptiness. He had lost so much. His trust, his marriage, his sense of security, but he had also gained something, clarity. As he left the courthouse, he didn't look back. Nika stood on the steps, tears streaming down her face as she watched him walk away. But Alex felt no sympathy, no regret. For the first time in months, he felt like he could breathe again. Nika's betrayal had shattered his world, but it had also shown him the truth. He deserved better. And now he was free to find it.